So go ahead and raise your hands if you have questions. And go ahead. Yep.
Outstanding photography. Amazing how well that was done for a consistency of what makes a great ocean. But I really have two questions. And the first one is, when yourself and the crew went to the Antarctic to film and produce this, did your wife go with you? And do you intend to do a sequel by walking to the South Pole?
My wife was smart enough not to go with me, although she was invited. And there is a sequel, but it's not to the South. I mean, the sequel's not to the North Pole, I think you would probably think. But anyway, I won't tell you anything about it because it's in the works.
Did you have any challenges in filming in this? Well, first of all, thank you for taking us to a place that I'm not sure if I will ever get to go to, but through your lens, I think like I was there. What were your challenges in being there, and maybe first and foremost, what brought you to this story, or how this story came to you?
Well, the story, I've been thinking about doing a story on marriage, and but I hadn't thought about doing it in Antarctica. And a close friend of mine was shooting essentially a documentary work down in Antarctica, and he raised money to charter this ship that we were on. And we went to dinner one night, and he said, it was actually right when the economy collapsed, and he got us a crazy deal and raised the money from benefactors. And he invited my wife and I to come and to do our work. He was inviting a lot of different artists to come and essentially just come along and do their work. And by the end of the dinner, I told him I'd been working on a story, and I was thinking about where to set it, and I thought the ship would be a fascinating place to set it. And he was just like, yeah, let's do it, you should come. And so I had spent about a week thinking of trying to decide if I was insane or not. And then, I was insane for sure. But we modified the story, and I worked really hard on a very fast timeline because the ship had a date that it was leaving that was sooner than most, people could think is possible to pull together a film. But we did it, and we got a great group of people, and we got on the ship, and it was really challenging. Everything was challenging. It was hard to imagine the obstacles you might face shooting a feature film for the first time, but much less the first time on a ship crossing the roughest sea in the world with not enough crew. So it was hard.
And how much of the script was improvised?
So a lot of the script was improvised. The story is very much the story that I wrote, but when I cast Vincent Kartheiser and Olivia Thirlby and Billy Campbell and Lisa Harrow, actually Billy Campbell lives in Vancouver most of the time, the deal with them was they had read maybe a 6-page treatment, and I told them they wouldn't see a script until we got to southern Argentina, and that they would have to improvise around the scenes because I really didn't have enough time to do rewrites. And so it was really an important thing that they were game to improvise around the themes of each of the scenes, and so we did a tremendous amount of improvising every time we set up a different scene.
I'm about to be married, and we've been talking about the Antarctic. Having watched this film, I'm aware that the notion of going to the Antarctic has been my initiative, although she sort of seems to be going along with it. She's not here right now.
Okay. I'm looking around.
Let's talk. She's in London.
We can send her a copy.
We're recording this.
I'm interested in this film. I agree with what somebody said a few moments ago. Just to watch it for the scenery is absolutely fantastic. I already feel I've been to the Antarctic. But I'm also interested in it from the point of view of gender issues, which I don't think has sort of come up yet, because I wasn't expecting the film to quite end the way it did. In fact, I was sort of hoping there might be a bit of sort of drama or sort of some more pulling apart for the dramatic point of view. But it seems that the film ended with him accepting the difficulty in the sort of breakdown temporarily in the relationship between Chloe and Peter, and it seems that he accepted from the last things, almost the last things he said, was that he had to look inward. This phrase being used rather than the explorer and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Are you leaving it so that she accepts no responsibility whatsoever for her, I think, also rather bad behavior?
No, I think they're both pretty inexperienced at relatedness, and so the way I at least interpret it is that they both know that they've gone down roads they shouldn't have gone down, and don't know how to communicate very well. And I actually struggled not to give the ending that you were expecting. I didn't want to kind of go there. I don't want to leave it kind of in this place where we all kind of go through it one time and like, good luck on the honeymoon. That's gonna go. You should go. Just have her call me and I'll talk her through it.
Just to that end, I just wanted to comment that it actually, the ending to me feels like a beginning. So it's like there's a new phase that they've evolved to this new place, which is rather exciting. Too bad they had to go all the way there to experience it.
How long was your actual shoot on the ship?
So the entire shoot was a month. We were on the ship for 23 days. Yeah.
What time of year were you there? I'll be there for 6 days in the middle of January, so I'm just trying to see.
Yeah, that's a good time. January, February. We were there towards the end of January, middle of February. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to touch on things one. I love the film. I love your cinematography. Absolutely. I love how poignant you were. How were you inspired?
How was I inspired? By my wife, by my marriage, and by the place. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm really interested in making stories about relationships, I guess.
It really does make you look today.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Thanks.
I noticed in the credits that you had Juliette Binoche as a passenger. Did you approach her to offer her a bit part in the film?
We just said that, so expound on that, when my colleague Gregory invited me and my wife and I to come on the ship, there were a lot of other extraordinary friends of his he's from Paris, he lives in Paris quite a bit, and he's friends with Juliette, so he invited her. And Roger Payne, who plays the whale biologist, is the whale biologist Roger Payne, who was also invited by Gregory and happens to be married to Lisa Harris. So there were a lot of these little connective tissues. So Juliette and I had many breakfasts and dinners together and talked about what her role was going to be. And it just seemed too bizarre to put her in the film. So it was heartbreaking not to, because she's wonderful, but she was around a lot.
Is there anyone in the back?
Sure.
You mentioned that you had this idea of dealing with the marriage before getting the idea of this.
Yeah.
Was the concept of the difficulties of separation between the people, was that thought through before you got offered to go on the boat, or was that a result of being offered to go on the boat?
Well, actually, I was writing a story, thinking about a story about the middle of a marriage, but for a number of reasons, some of which I'll tell you. One was that the casting director who came on board, Avi Kaufman, who's a phenomenal casting director, I had to convince her to take me on because I'm a first-time director. And she said, there's just no way we're going to be able to get, I gave her a list of actors I wanted that were like in the middle of their lives. And she's like, forget it. These people are not going to get on a boat with you and go to Antarctica as a first-time director. And Olivia Thirlby was one of the first younger actresses that I met with. And she walked into our home and the first thing she said to me, she said, I'm going to Antarctica with you. And I said, oh, really? Like, the script's not even for someone your age. And she, anyway, she just really was the right person to bring on the trip. And so I rewrote the story for to portray a younger couple and the honeymoon I had with my wife. So, just kidding.
What was your choice of casting Vincent for this particular role?
Why Vincent? Well, we met a whole bunch of men his age group. Vincent is a phenomenal actor, and he loves to improvise, which was a really big condition. We met some other actors that were not as interested in that challenge. And also Olivia, when I cast her first, and so when I talked to her about who would play her counterpart, she was really turned on by the idea of having Vincent play that role. So, I mean, she said she thought it was a good idea, a good choice. So, I took that into serious consideration.
Are there a lot of Mad Men fans here?
In the very back.
What is the significance of the title?
So the title Red Knot has a bunch of different kind of roots for me. One is I view the heart as kind of a red knot, and tying the knot is in the title. That was a piece of it. But actually the original inspiration for the title was based on a bird called the red knot, which is a bird that migrates from the southern tip of Argentina to the Arctic and back again every year, and just to mate. It mates up in the Arctic tundra, and then they all fly back down to southern Argentina. And I mean, I guess that metaphorically it's an inspired notion, but also there was a version of the script where Peter's character was pursuing a story about the red knot, but that was on the editing room floor now. So, all right. Is anybody?
One little question.
Yeah.
I was just wondering about the scene with the doctor, which didn't seem to develop. I wasn't quite sure. Are we supposed to think she's pregnant or something of that sort? Especially with the sickness, although that's seasickness and so on. I just wasn't quite sure what the scene with the doctor was doing in there.
Yeah. I kind of, I mean, I left it open to you to interpret what was going on with her, whether she was just, I mean, you know, she was definitely having a rough trip while her husband was having a pretty darn good trip at that time. So I think it was just to create the dichotomy between the journey she was on and the journey he was on and how different they were. And then I think a lot of people have thought she might be pregnant, which I think is interesting.
Well, because of what she says about the cigarette.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
Did you get seasick on the voyage?
I did when we were shooting that lovemaking scene, and I was in the hallway like pulling focus with my AC, and it was the roughest day. We were in really rough seas, and I just said cut, and I sprinted out and did my business, and then came back and we kept shooting. But that was the only time I got sick. Yeah. Everybody got sick actually. Yeah.
How much of the story actually gets made in the honeymoon? Given that you were only shooting for 23 days and everybody was improvising, how much of the story sort of fills in as your...
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of a revelation to me that we actually ended up with the story that I wrote. But we really did, but we went down a lot of strange roads to get there. But in the end, it really is the story I wrote, and that was kind of gratifying. Yes.
Well, I love the way you edit and the music instrument as well. Really kind of put that song or things like that. Just, I don't know, it's more to do as you did. Really delivered.
Thank you. What's the name of the town? Is there anybody here from Kelowna? Well, anyway, the composer Garth Stevenson is from Kelowna, which I guess is 6 hours due north of this. He plays a stand-up bass with a bow, and anything that wasn't sung was composed by him, and then all of the songs except for the last one, Roses Not Red, were performed by his wife, except for Billie Holiday, which was performed by another young woman.
I think we have time for one more, because we have another show coming in.
Great lighting.
Yes?
What kind of camera?
So we shot on everything because we had a very short trip. We brought an Aton 35 millimeter camera with us and shot on 2-Pro 35. We brought the Red with us, 2 of them, and then we had a number of Canon 5Ds and 7Ds floating around, and all that montage footage is 5D, 7D footage, and then the different sequences. So we used everything. I just had a lot of people running around with cameras shooting B-roll.
And Scott is a photographer day-to-day as well, so you can check out his website. I think it's scottcohen.us. Yeah.
And one more thing is, it's always great if you guys like the film, go to the website for the film, redknotjourney.com, and put your name and email and do social media stuff. It's always helpful to get feedback from people that connect with the film. And I think we have another screening tomorrow at 4 at the Rio, if you want to tell people. Thanks.
And please vote for the film.